Today, we have placed 13 new groups on that list, including 4 ideologically motivated violent extremist groups. Those 4 groups include the Atomwaffen Division, the Base, the Proud Boys, and the Russian Imperial Movement. We also recognize that other forms of violent extremism remain a serious concern, such as those motivated by religion or political.
Do we really need listings to keep us safe? Hi, this is Phil Gurski, President and CEO of Borealis Threat Risk Consulting in Russell, Canada, and you're listening to Quick Hits. I'm recording this on the evening of February the 3rd, 2021. And I told myself I wouldn't do this, but I'm going to give you another podcast on terrorist listings in Canada. I swore that I've said enough about this. My position is very well known, but I've been seeing some reaction on Twitter and in other media on this move by the Canadian government this afternoon to add 13 more groups to the terrorist listing. So for those who aren't following this item, terrorist listings is something that came about in the aftermath of 9/11. It's a way for the government to designate a particular group as a terrorist entity, and it has some limited implications for things like terrorist financing, but really that's about it. So terrorist listings are a relatively new phenomenon in Canada when it comes to counterterrorism. It wasn't around for the first 150 years almost of our existence, and I have argued that in fact it's a very limited tool, and in fact, this is slightly political. So for the record, the 13 groups that have been added to the Canadian terrorist listings as of today are, and I quote, Atomwaffen Division, which is a neo-Nazi group, the Base, which I think is also neo-Nazi, the Proud Boys, which of course we've been talking an awful lot about since the January 6th attack on the Capitol, the Russian Imperial Movement, which I think is a pro-Russian group in Ukraine, I'm not entirely certain, 3 Al-Qaeda affiliates, Jamaat Nusrat al-Islam al-Muslimin, the Front de Libération de Messina and Ansar-Din, as well as 5 ISIS affiliates, Islamic State in West Africa Province, Greater Sahara, Libya, Islamic State East Asia, and Islamic State Bangladesh, and a group called Hizbut al-Mujahideen. Now, a security official who is anonymous stated that, in fact, the Proud Boys, this is all about Proud Boys. The other groups, like, who gives a rat's ass, right? This is all about the Proud Boys. The security official says this was not political in nature. In fact, that the Proud Boys have been under review for quite some time, and that the January 6th attack was, quote, wasn't the only factor and it wasn't the driving factor in designating the group as a terrorist entity. It's a group that we've been looking at as a community for quite some time. Now, I have no idea who the security official is. I'm guessing it's someone in public safety and not CSIS, but I could be wrong. The reason why I wanted to devote, yes, one more quick hits to listing is to simply underscore what's the point? We've now listed 5 ISIS groups. So for those who been asleep at the wheel for the past couple of years, Islamic State has been adding so-called provinces to its so-called caliphate ever since 2014. I wrote a whole book on it in 2016, The Lesser Jihads. There are provinces in the Sinai. There are provinces in the Sahel. I don't know. Why isn't the group in Mozambique being listed, for example? I don't know. Why isn't the group in Yemen being listed? Maybe here it is. I don't know. As for the Al-Qaeda affiliates, again, I mean, Al-Qaeda's been on the list since 2002. Do we need to list another Al-Qaeda affiliate? Seemed pretty clear to me that Al-Qaeda is a terrorist group. And, Atomwaffen Division, I mean, what is the point of doing this? Again, when it comes to terrorist financing, I get it. But the bottom line is that these groups don't do a heck of a lot of fundraising anyway. Certainly not in Canada. Not like the Tamil Tigers did for decades in the Sri Lankan community. Not like Hezbollah is probably still doing in parts of the Lebanese and Muslim community here in Canada. The terrorist listing process is a very political one. I already talked about the MEK being delisted back in 2012. Now, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to get crucified for it. But I think the decision to list the Proud Boys and the other white extremist groups that are on this list as of today is an effort by the Trudeau government to be seen to be diversified. Someone looked at the list and said there's too many Muslim groups on there, like Boko Haram and Al-Qaeda and all the Al-Qaeda affiliates and Islamic State affiliates and all the groups in Southeast Asia and all the groups in Pakistan and all the groups in Afghanistan and all the groups in Yemen, and the list goes on and on and on and on and on. and we have to make it look more, I don't know, cosmopolitan. That's not a political agenda? I mean, am I missing something here? Again, and for the record, I'm not a Proud Boys fan. I'm not an Oath Keepers fan. I'm not a Three Percenters fan. I'm not a Soldiers of Odin fan. I'm not a fan of La Meute in Quebec. I do think these are right-wing extremist groups. And I think that my former colleagues at CSIS and my former friends at the RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, are probably watching these guys so that they don't carry out acts of violent extremism, which would qualify as terrorism in some cases. Other cases might be just hate crimes. There's a very fine line between a hate crime and a terrorist crime, in my view. So I think they're pretty well already on the job. So what does adding them to the list do? Well, some say, well, if you have a Proud Boys jacket, you can be charged. Really? Well, I'd like to see that one go up in court. I'm sure their defense lawyers lining up the yin yang, hoping that this one actually gets across their ledger one day, in terms of freedom of speech and all that kind of stuff. Anyhow, so no, I'm not dismissing right-wing extremism. I'm not dismissing the hateful rhetoric and the potential, and I stress potential, for violence that these groups exhibit. And there certainly were Proud Boys that took part in the January 6th riot on Capitol Hill. Is it just me, or is this timing just incredibly coincidental? The riots take place on January 6th. Jagmeet Singh says, let's name the Proud Boys a terrorist group. Parliament votes on it. And the day after, it gets listed? And some security official says it's a pure coincidence? Come on, guys. Cut us a little bit of slack on this. This would not be happening if the Proud Boys had not taken part in the attack on the Capitol in Washington, D.C., less than a week after New Year's. There's a cause and effect here. Don't treat us like morons. Don't treat us as if you dropped off the turnip truck yesterday. Okay? There's a lot of politics to this process. And as I've argued, and I'm not going to repeat the arguments, in toto, but as I've been saying, we did without listings for the better part of 150 years in this country, and we did good counterterrorism work. Listings aren't the end-all and the be-all. They may help with terrorist financing, and yet still, I have yet to see a trial in Canada in which somebody is been charged and convicted for sending money to Hezbollah. If I'm missing something, please send it my way. I'll certainly own up to my mistake and the gap in my knowledge. But this announcement by Public Safety Today smacks of politics. Yes, they listed 13 groups, only with 3 or 4 of them are right-wing. You've got some jihadis in there in the bunch as well. I didn't wake up this morning wondering whether ISIS affiliates were terrorist groups. I kind of knew that back in 2014. I didn't wake up this morning wondering if Al-Qaeda affiliates were terrorist groups. I kind of knew that back in 2001. So, again, someone enlighten me as to what is the purpose of listing a terrorist group. Because I don't get it. Maybe I'm just an old retired guy who's lost the plan here, but this really stinks to high heaven of a political process by the Trudeau Liberals to be seen to be stealing an NDP idea to make themselves look good in the eyes of the Canadian public. As far as I'm concerned, the Proud Boys can go to hell. I don't care about them. But listing them as a terrorist entity, along with the other ones, no, ain't gonna cut it, folks. We could get by very, very easily without calling people terrorist groups. It's as simple as that. Anyhow, that's what I think. I want to recognize the Grimsby Peach Kings as my hockey team of the podcast. My wife is from the Niagara Peninsula, and the Grimsby Peach Kings, not sure what league they're in. Junior C, I think, out there. Anyhow, great local team. And of course, before I leave you today, it's time for your Hardy Boys Pearl of Wisdom from the Hardy Boys Guide to Life. Here we go, from the Arctic Patrol Mystery. Sounds very Canadian. When searching for a person who hasn't been heard of for a long time, the first place you should look for is the telephone book. Okay, the Hardy Boys weren't around during the internet, okay? They had to look up names in the phone book. They couldn't Google them. These guys are from the 50s. Joe and Frank Hardy didn't have computers back then, so cut them some slack, would you? Anyhow, love to hear what you think about the listings process. Am I completely off base here? Am I losing it? You can reach me on email, borealisrisk@gmail.com, or on Twitter @BorealisSaves. You can also find me on LinkedIn and on Facebook. If you like the content, you want to get more, go to the website, borealisthreatandrisk.com. Hit the subscribe button. You get a free daily digest to your inbox every day. And you'll also find a link how to buy my most recent book, The Peaceable Kingdom, A History of Terrorism in Canada, from Confederation to the Present. A very practitioner-based book. It's my experiences and the experience of 30 of my best friends who used to work with CSIS and the RCMP in counterterrorism from the 1960s onward. Love to hear what you think of the podcast. Drop me a line. I'll talk to you again soon. Until then, stay safe.